Hello, everybody. This is Mary Reeves with Able South Carolina. Give me 1 second. We are having a little bit of a technical difficulty here. And we are going to get ourselves started in just a minute. I know we have folks slowly coming in. So that is fantastic. So we will get started in just 1 second. Okay, perfect. I think we might have it sorted out now. Let's see. Amanda, we got you. Wonderful. Thank you. Apologies for the tech issues today. Amanda, go ahead and get us started if you want to. I'm still trying to get our captioner connected. For some reason, it's not letting me do that. So captions are coming, y'all.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. Welcome to our first session in the second year of our Disability and Arts webinar series. We are thrilled that you've chosen to spend the afternoon with us. My name is Amanda Noyes, and I am the Arts and Education Accessibility Director for the South Carolina Arts Commission. I'm a white female in my mid-30s with brown hair that I've curled today, and I'm wearing a green short sleeve top. The mission of the South Carolina Arts Commission is to promote equitable access to the arts in South Carolina. And so we're seeking to meet that mission in part through our partnership with Able South Carolina. Able is here with us today to help to lead the presentation on ways to engage the disability community with your organization. About 2 years ago, SCAC launched our Arts for All SC grant, which was our first large-scale effort to support arts organizations who desire to work towards being more accessible. Since that launch, our partnership with Able South Carolina has grown, and we are now working collaboratively to support arts organizations across the state in their accessibility journeys. I am so excited for today's webinar, and I hope you find the information helpful. Please consider registering for the rest of the series, which will run September through November. And then we're going to take a short break and then resume in February through June. And we'll share a little bit more about this, but you'll see as well, if you are an operating support grantee for the South Carolina Arts Commission, there are some other ways that you can connect through Arts for All, such as through our technical assistance opportunities. So we'll share more about that. But I'm going to hand it over to Dori Tempio, who will be leading us today. Thank you so much, Dori, and feel free to take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are so happy to have all of you with us for a webinar called Nothing About Us Without Us, Embracing Disability, Connecting with People with Disabilities, and Ensuring Access and Inclusivity. I am really excited because I'm going to show you all a component of accessibility. When you're giving a presentation that we are today, or you are talking about art, or you're demonstrating art, you want to describe what is happening or what is on the screen for those individuals with disabilities that may not be able to see it, because they want to have the same experience that everyone else does. So on my screen, I have an individual who is a person of color. They are wearing glasses. They have black curly hair with a gray goatee. They are wearing denim overalls with a light blue and dark blue t-shirt. They're holding a yellow poster that says in black writing, "Nothing about us without us." And they are in front of a mural of a young adolescent individual who is a person of color with black curly hair, and they have bluish gray highlights in the black curly hair. The person is wearing a purple, pink, and light blue and white top, and it looks as though they have their head down and they have tears coming through their eyes. It is actually a piece of art created by this individual. Next slide, please. For those of you who don't know me and those of you who already do, I'm so glad to be back with you presenting again today. I did a previous presentation for the Arts Commission webinar series on disability culture. I am Dori Tempio. My pronouns are she and her. I am the Senior Director of Community Education for Able South Carolina. Some things I wanted you all to know about me. I am a lover of anything art. I love any medium of art. I love going to art galleries, art festivals, art events in the community, whether they are theater, dance, music, painting, sculpture, you name it. I seek adventure in my everyday life all the time. I love to travel. I am also a person who writes poetry, and I am a writer, and they are my passions. I am a proud person with both a developmental disability and a physical disability. In the picture on the screen, I am in front of some greenery. I'm sitting in my black, silver, and blue power wheelchair. In the picture, I am wearing a light bluish gray dress with yellow, teal, pink flowers, and I'm wearing a white top under my dress, and I have blue, silver, and teal earrings and a necklace on. I have dark brown hair with light brown highlights, and next to me in the picture, which you can't see just like she is today, I have a dark yellow Labrador Retriever service animal. She is wearing her purple PALS cape. And today I'm wearing a bright pink dress with a black top underneath. And I'm wearing a silver, pink, and purple necklace with matching earrings. And I am still a white individual with blue eyes, and I have dark brown hair with light brown highlights. And I'm sitting in my power wheelchair. In back of me, I've got a black screen with the colors of Able South Carolina, teal, and a bright yellow celadine green, and it says Able South Carolina. But I am so happy to be with you all, and I'm excited for this journey we're going to take on learning together today. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, we wanted just to give you a brief overview of who Able South Carolina is. We've been around since 1994. We are the largest federally recognized disability-led organization in South Carolina. We work every day to seek transformational changes in systems, communities, and individuals. Our organization has a three-pronged mission. Number one, we equip people with disabilities with the tools to foster disability pride and to direct their own lives. We educate the community to challenge stereotypes and to eliminate barriers for individuals with disabilities to participate in community events and programs. And lastly, we work to advocate on behalf of the disability community for access, equity, and inclusion at the individual level, local level, state level, and we do a lot of national work as well. At the end of the day, our vision for our organization is to create a South Carolina that is a national model of equity and inclusion for all people with all types of disabilities. Next slide, please. Well, if you're like me, I love a good quiz. So we are going to start out with a quiz. And we knew everybody would be so excited. So we put a picture of Will Ferrell. And it says, I love quizzes. And so we're going to start out with a quiz to see what everyone may remember from some of the previous disability trainings we've done in the webinar series, as well as to see what you remember from the disability culture training that I did previously. And I'll go through some of the questions with you, and I'll have Mary scroll down as we're able to. But question number 1, I know the definition of disability. You can choose yes or no. 2, I understand what the legal requirements are under the Americans with Disabilities Act for my organization or your program. Number 3, I know how to provide reasonable accommodations and or program modifications if someone with a disability requests them. Yes or no. And then we're going to scroll down to 4 and 5. I'm trying to scroll down. There we go. Number 4, my organization has a policy in place so that others can find out how to provide accessibility. That might be a policy about reasonable accommodations or program modifications and how someone requests them. It might be a policy on service animals. It might be a policy on how you're going to work with other community partners, as well as customers and patrons with disabilities. And then lastly, my organization prioritizes inclusion and ensures everyone, whether they are a staff member, a volunteer, an intern, or a community member partnered with you on how to do so. I'm excited. I can't wait to see the answers. It says I'm not allowed to vote, so I'm excited to see your answers.
Sorry, Dori. Okay,
I
y'all, this is
know.
Mary. So I am going to flip over to our next webinar picture because here we go. So Dori, 100% of folks said that they know the definition of a disability. About
Woohoo!
84%, yeah, and we had 32 of our participants answer. About 84% understand the legal requirements under the ADA for their organization, which is amazing. 79% know how to provide accommodations or modifications if someone requests them. Roughly half have a policy in place so that folks can find out how to provide accessibility. And a little more than half, 61%, say that their organization prioritizes inclusion and ensures everyone is trained how to do so. So Dori, I am going to make sure that folks can see this link down here, and I know it's long, but we'll get this to you. So if you are one of the folks who didn't feel real comfortable on questions 4 and 5, we encourage you to go back and watch these webinars. We have tons of information that will answer most of these questions for you. So if you find yourself later today like, ooh, wow, I really do need to go watch these webinars, they are here. They're on the Arts Commission webpage. It links to their YouTube, and they're available for you to watch anytime. All right, Dori, back to you.
Or if you're like me and you just want a quick refresher, right? Because I don't know about you all, we all learn a lot of different things in our jobs, and we all live a very fast-paced life. So sometimes a quick refresher can be helpful as we're embarking on new programs, as we're meeting people in the community who want to access our programs, and kind of refreshing, okay, well, how do I go back and help move the process along? So I'm so glad so many of you are so invested in this. As a person with a disability who they themselves loves art, this is wonderful to me. But I decided, because if you're like me, a quick refresher can't hurt. So we're going to go back and just quickly look at the definition of disability and how it pertains to including people with disabilities. So I'm going to have Mary go to the next slide. So according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, a disability is a substantial limitation in being able to perform one or more daily living activities. And I want to see who's awake. Who can tell me one activity you've done today before you came to this training? What's one activity you've done? You can either put it in the chat. I'm not sure if you're able to unmute yourself. If you can, feel free. Either way, what's one thing you did today? I'm trying to see if that works. Can anybody tell us one activity you did today? Like, I'll give you an example. I drank some coffee. How about other people? Oh, the chat is disabled, Mary.
Gracious, y'all. Okay, 1 second. Thought I fixed that.
But if you want to put it in the answers, put it there while we wait, because that way we can just keep going. Walk to work. Woohoo! All right, Charles, I'm envious of you. You went grocery shopping. How about some other friends on the chat? Well, in the question, post office. Woohoo! Parked further away from my work entrance. I hope that was a choice of yours. Met with my painting group and had lunch. That is awesome, y'all. These are all great activities of daily living. And when we're talking about people with disabilities, it doesn't mean they don't do these activities. It just means we use non-traditional methods to carry them out. So the definition of disability is actually a positive one, because it allows for people like myself and other individuals with a variety of disabilities to use the supports and or the legal words, reasonable accommodations or program modifications to complete those activities. So for me, if I went grocery shopping, I would use the accessible cart that they have. If I were to go to the post office, I would use my power wheelchair to get into the post office. If I were painting, I actually have used adapted paintbrushes and other equipment to carry out that painting. So basically, in a nutshell, my friends, the definition of disability is saying that people with disabilities carry out tasks of daily living in non-traditional ways. And we're going to go to the next slide, Mary. And just a refresher, currently in the United States, 61 million Americans have disclosed that they have a disability. That means 1 in 4 Americans has a disability that have disclosed. And we really know that the numbers are probably higher. 1 in 3 South Carolinians has a disability in South Carolina. That means over 1 million individuals in South Carolina alone have a disability that have disclosed they have a disability. And when we bring all of that information together, disability is the largest minority group in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And that is because disability intersects with all other cultural backgrounds, the aging community, the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous people of color, the LGBTQIA plus community, socioeconomic status. Disability is the largest minority group in the United States. And so therefore, we want to have access to all the same great art programs that everyone else does. So we're going to go to the next slide. Disability is diversity. And on the screen, I have two individuals that are people of color, and they are signing back and forth to one another. One is wearing a, I would call it a kind of melon colored t-shirt with light blue and dark blue, navy blue stripes. And the other person is wearing a lavender jacket, and they are using sign language and communicating back and forth, and they're sitting in front of a window. So disability, as I just mentioned to y'all, it intersects with all other populations. For those of you who may be new to our webinar series, and I would really recommend you go back and watch our disability culture webinar. It's a cultural identity, and an identity that individuals positively embrace. I am proud to be a member of the disability community. It is one of my social identities. If you ask me to tell you 3 things about myself, the first I usually tell people is I am a proud person with a developmental and a physical disability. We also, though, remind folks that 2 people who may have the same disability may have significantly different needs. They may utilize different reasonable accommodations or program modifications, and they may have significantly different passions, dreams, and aspirations. They also may have completely different personalities. And so realizing one size doesn't fit all. And that at the end of the day, individuals with disabilities were very adaptable people. We live in a world that is not accessible, and it really wasn't created for us. But we can succeed. We can participate in any type of art or other community program as long as equitable spaces and opportunities are provided and they're given. And when you're willing to do what the Arts Commission of South Carolina has done and open the door for accessibility and art programs, anything is truly possible. Next slide, please. So I'm ready. I warn people, I love dialogue. I love communication. So I'm excited, and we're going to have some conversation now. So we want to talk with you about, what do you all think are some of the perceived challenges that could be a part of creating accessible events or programs? We'd even love to hear if you've experienced any of those challenges, but we're also asking, what do you think might make it hard to make a program or event accessible for all types of people with disabilities? Javi says accessibility can be unaffordable. Accessibility, it's going fast now, y'all, so I may not get everybody's name. Cost. Susan says budget restraints could maybe be a concern. Additional cost by Glenna. Shannon Ivy has heard budget all the time. And what happens if you provide accessible options and then the folks that you have them for don't show up? Haley's mentioned location. Maria is adding in, it can be hard to find providers even if you do have budget available, but that's definitely can be a challenge. Thank you, Maria. Anybody else have some thoughts? We have a lot of people, so I like to give people time to think about it too. What else could be some challenges to creating accessible events or programs? And I'll put it to you another way. Maybe we're going to have a resident artist that has a disability versus we're going to have a festival in the community that features art. Maisie says bandwidth for a small staff, nonprofit scarcity models. Good. Shannon comes back, if we do XYZ once, do we have to do it every time? So capacity, okay. Anybody else have thoughts about this? And trust me, there's nothing you're going to say that makes anyone uncomfortable. We can't address the challenges out there if we don't know what some of those challenges may be. And so we as a disability community love partnering with the community, because sometimes some of those challenges that may be going on, maybe we have some ideas, thoughts, and creativity that can go into addressing them. Does anybody have any other thoughts on what some challenges of creating accessible events or programs can be? When we plan an event, we have to make sure that the venue is accessible, and we need to find out ahead of time to make sure we have all the resources for students with disabilities. Awesome. That was from Finley. Lewis said, being prepared to cover all disabilities with a small team. Thank you all for sharing, and I'll read any more that come up. Staff struggling with their own disabilities that make other accessibility issues difficult to address. Thank you, Maisie. And I'm going to give a fist bump out there, because I love hearing that we do have staff with disabilities. You know, life has a lot of challenges, and whether you have disabilities or not, we all probably encounter them, whether we're staff with disabilities or not. So I would probably add, you know, just the life challenges that we all may be encountering on an everyday experience, right? The day you go to work and your car breaks down on the way to work, or you show up at work and, for instance, we had a challenge this morning. The internet wasn't working here, and there was an outage in the area, and hoping it would get back up in time for the webinar. So I think those are all really good points. Does anybody have anything else that we haven't captured that y'all would like to share or address? Because we really want to be a partner for addressing some of the challenges that may be experienced. And the only way we can do that is if we know what they are. Mary Reeves said, finding a venue that has stage access for those with disabilities. And Marie-Louise Morado, and I hope I pronounced that right, Marie, noted that as well. Mary shared, because the screen was going by really fast. So thank you, Mary. And thank you, everybody else. We'll go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about, for a few minutes, why is accessibility and engagement important? It's a twofold thing, really, because when you're doing accessibility and engagement of people with disabilities in your programs, it's not just about making your program accessible and engaging to the disability community, but you are modeling inclusion and accessibility to the larger whole of our community. You're showing the community as a whole around the state, all of our different communities, that people with disabilities belong, that the disability community is welcome, and that the disability community are also those artists that are a part of the art community too, whether they're dancers, whether they're singers, whether they're musicians, whether they do painting, sculpture. I can name a variety, but it's so important that you're modeling that inclusion, because you all don't know how much I hear from the community, not only in the professional work that I do, but as a citizen with a disability. People will say to me, have you checked out this art program downtown at either the Columbia Museum of Art or a program that the Arts Commission has sponsored? Did you know that they're accessible? Do you know that everybody can go? It really, really makes a difference. You're promoting empowerment to the disability community when you make programs accessible and you're engaging the disability community. It allows people with disabilities to say, I belong here. I have these talents, skills, and abilities, and I can show them off just like everybody else. It allows full participation. None of us want to be invited to something and not be able to participate, or we only want to half participate. Full participation means finding meaningful ways that all people can participate, whether they do the activity in the exact same way or not. When you're including accessibility and engagement of people with disabilities in your programs, in your events, it also removes barriers that the disability community may be up against to participating in those programs and events. It builds relationships, and that is so instrumental. How do we have community partnerships? How do we make friends? How do we become part of our communities? It's all about relationship building. And at the end of the day, it meets the legal and ethical responsibilities of different disability rights laws and other laws in general. And I'm going to come back to what Christy just put in the chat. Christy said one issue that Christy's seen involves silos. For instance, people tend to think someone with a disability needs a specialized group versus integration, and that accessibility falls on one department versus everyone at the organization. Christy, if Dori could give you a live fist bump, I'm going to do it on camera. You're right on the money with both of those things. Oftentimes, disability has been thought to be separate, and we talked a lot about that in our disability culture webinar that we did previously. And we talked about the fact that separate isn't equal. Separate is just separate. And disability isn't something that makes us from another planet. I still have the same loves, passions, and dreams in the art realm that other artists have. I just have to find the right avenue that works best for me to carry them out. So I told you all I'm a writer, and I write poetry, and I write fiction and some other things. I can't physically handwrite, and I can't use my fingers to type. I use voice to text technology. It doesn't make me any less of a poet or any less of a writer. And I still want to do those same art things. I used to be the director for my high school's annual production when I was an English teacher of middle and high school students, and I was the director of theater. I didn't do anything different than a typical person who did that job did. I used different reasonable accommodations and program modifications to carry out that job and that roles and that activities. At art and theater, people can do it. They just have to find the right opportunity, the right supports and accommodations, and the right people that want to support that. So I'm really gonna give that snap back to Christy, because Christy's right. She said the key thing here today: accessibility should not be falling on one department. It's everybody's responsibility in the organization. If you all welcome accessibility, if you all welcome engaging people with disabilities, and if you all welcome meaningful inclusion, then guess what? Engagement happens. And so we're going to talk about, I have a picture on the screen of two individuals. They're members of the BIPOC community. One is wearing a white t-shirt and gray pants with short black hair with a dark black goatee, sitting in a manual wheelchair, talking and communicating with another individual who is holding a laptop. And they are wearing a green scarf on their head with silver earrings and a navy blue dress. And they're talking in front of a window. So I want to talk to y'all about, we use a buzzword in our society. We use that word inclusion. But how do we have true, meaningful, impactful inclusion? Because if you want to have meaningful, impactful inclusion, that means that you want increased participation in not only activities that you're offering as a community, but inclusion in the life roles and activities that we as individuals have in our everyday lives. So whether you're a student, whether you are a worker at the art program, whether you are a friend of someone with an artist who's an artist, whether you are a community member going to see that art, whether you are a consumer or a client, whether you're that person, you're the spouse of the artist, whether you're the partner or the parent or the person with the disability, is all of these roles that I just mentioned. True, meaningful, impactful inclusion isn't that we just invited everyone to come. That's not meaningful inclusion. True, meaningful, impactful inclusion is where we open the opportunities for everyone, including the disability community, to partake in art, to be an artist, to be an observer, to be a patron, and to have that experience that we all want to have. And as we're doing that, we elevate our societal roles of being students. Because I will tell you, as a student with a disability, I wanted to be in those art programs. I wanted to go to those art trips that we did as a school. I wanted to be on that stage performing. And just because I sit in a wheelchair and I process information in a non-traditional way, that shouldn't keep me from having all of the same opportunities that everyone else should have and have gotten. So I want everybody, as we're talking today, to be thinking about how can your programs support, elevate, and uplift meaningful, impactful inclusion. Because I will promise you that word of mouth around our state is very high. And I hear about the programs that are excelling, and I hear about the programs that can use a little improvement. And so the great thing is that we can all work together. And the more we learn, the more we grow. The more we grow, the more opportunities exist. The more opportunities that exist, the bigger, wide-ranging programs are developed. I remember talking to Amanda about a year ago, or 2 years ago now, Amanda? And we were just talking about what a program like this could look like, and look at it 2 years later. So whenever anybody tells me something can't happen, anything's possible. We just have to open our thoughts to it. And when we open our thoughts and we say, hey, how can we expand this further, then anything that we truly want to take place will. So I want to ask you all a really important question. And again, you can put it in the chat. If anybody wants to unmute, feel free, because I love to hear from people and engage. How do we truly achieve inclusion in our programs if our events and our programs are not accessible? I'll say that again because I said it kind of fast. How do we achieve inclusion in our programs and events if our events and programs are not accessible? I'm giving, if you want to share something, feel free. I like everyone to have dialogue, not just me talk. Anyone have thoughts on that? I'm going to share with you. It is kind of a two-pronged thing. Woohoo! Christy, are you sure you don't want to go on the road with Dori? We can do a whole webinar series. Awesome. Christy said we start by asking people with disabilities and other experts what they need to have happen to create more accessibility and inclusion. Mayor, I might need your help and scroll down because everybody like did it all at once. You want to read through them?
Absolutely. So we got Christie's.
Yep.
Jeannie said providing a live stream of performances. Wendy said if someone attends, they must bring someone who will interpret, help, and assist. Christy said she's a music therapist and loves this topic. Shannon Ivy said 1,000%. Marie Louise Moreto said you can't. And Shannon said nothing about us without us is for us.
Woohoo! I love this group. Woohoo! That's why I love doing these webinars and coming to your programs. They're so awesome. You all are right on the money. There are opportunities for us to try it, but at the end of the day, and I'm not sure if you pronounce it Marie or Mary, if it's not accessible, how will they come? And how will we achieve true, meaningful, impactful inclusion? And that's really what this is talking about. If it's not accessible, the disability community is not able to participate. If we're not able to participate, then we have the challenge of how do we take part? And then if we want to take part, you all don't know how many people I talk to around the state that love art and want to be a part of art. So the way you all through this program have been opening doors to that happening has been truly incredible. And I can't wait to see how much further this program can go, because I know Amanda, she's a dreamer, so it'll keep going higher. All right, y'all ready? We're going to talk about accessibility. And on the screen, I have a picture of a painter who is painting on an accessible easel. It's adapted for an accessible art desk. And they are painting at their desk. They are sitting in a manual wheelchair, which is black, silver, and white. They are wearing a dark gray t-shirt and black pants. Their hair is in a bun. It's dark brown. They are a white individual, and on the floor next to them is a service animal, which is a golden doodle. No worries. Bye, Maisie. So accessibility is required by law under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and some other disability rights laws, but those are the main two to be focused on. Accessibility, my friends, is more than architectural or physical structural access. Accessibility is all opportunity. Accessibility is from the time I come in the doorway as a person with a disability to the time I leave that event, it is accessible for me. So if I'm a person with a hearing disability, is there going to be sign language interpreters and captioners? If I am a person with a visual disability, is your information in large print, braille, or on rich text format documents, which means it's coded for accessibility for me to know whether it's a play, whether it's an art exhibit, what's going on at that event. If I am a person with a visual disability, are your exhibits what we would call like physically touchable. I can touch them, so I get the same experience as Dori, who can see that sculpture. If I'm a person with autism or other developmental disabilities, am I able to be in an environment that's comfortable for me? If I need to take a break, if I need a quiet room, if I need the lights turned down for oversensory stimulation, am I able to participate? So it's full access to all materials and activities. And it means that the reasonable accommodations or program modifications need to be considered for planning and budgeting. I love that all of you brought that up in the first question. There are ways to budget that allow for accommodations and program modifications. People think at Able South Carolina, we must have an extensive budget for accommodations and program modifications. And honestly, we don't. We have a set budget, but it's no more than other organizations. And we're a staff of people with disabilities, and we have clients with disabilities. It's attainable. We're not talking millions of dollars in your budget. It might range from, depending on what activities you all are looking at doing for your programs, it could be as little as $5,000 up to, $7, $10. It's not as expensive as most people think. The average accommodation for an individual with disabilities, studies have shown, are $0. Zero. It's asking the person with the disability, what do you need to participate? It's asking, are there accommodations that could help you? It might mean moving the chairs around in the venue so it's more accessible for that person. It might be someone might need a sign language interpreter like we have today. Other people may need things in large print. But it really isn't as costly as people think. A lot of it is communicating with people what they need, as Christy mentioned earlier. People ask me when I go to events, what do you need? I said, I'll either need just a place where I can park my wheelchair. I will bring my accessible tools with me. It doesn't mean you have to provide all that, but it's communicating with the individual, and they can share that with you, and working together to address those things proactively. And at the end of the day, when we have something as simple as a policy for how an individual can request accommodations or program modifications, that's what leads to the equitable access for people with disabilities. It's having those things laid out so that when I show up at an event, or Mary shows up at an event, or my colleague Carrie shows up at an event, that we're not having to scramble to find the person to go to have that discussion, or it's listing it ahead of time on your promotional materials so that engagement can occur before the event. All right. So now we're going to get into the part of how do you plan events, programs, and activities that are accessible, inclusive, and engaging for the disability community. All right, and on the screen, y'all, I have a checklist and an individual checking off those items on a clipboard. So what do we have to think about? I was really impressed that some of you knew these things before we even started. So that puts you all one step ahead in the process. So great. First, location, location, location. We hear that a lot, right? In terms of location for events to engage the disability community, are there points of public transportation available for people to get there? Are there, is it in a location which is accessible that they can get into the actual physical structure? Do you have accessible bathrooms, and have you checked to make sure they're ADA compliant? That's the one that usually gets people sometimes. They don't realize it. They think because it has the universal disability symbol, which is the blue square with the white wheelchair, that it makes it automatically accessible. No, a lot of times people hang a sign and it's not. So really checking through that. Outreach. Are you doing specific outreach for your event to the disability community? Have you reached out to Able South Carolina, who, trust me, knows lots and lots of people? Have you reached out to other disability organizations? Are you going to outreach to areas where people with disabilities frequent? If you need tips on that, call us after this. We're happy to give you some of those. Are you providing materials in accessible formats? That means Braille. That means rich text format coded document. That means large print. That means plain language, which is not just for disabled people. The typical individual in this country reads at a 3rd grade level. That means when you create plain language materials, it's not just making the information. I heard someone in our community ask me this last week. They said, does it mean we're dumbing it down? No, it means you're using words that all people can understand, no matter their walk of life. And that's really, really important. Are your materials also available on audio if somebody needs it? They might. The meeting space. This is where we look at the actual rooms themselves within a location's venue. Are they set up to meet the needs of all people with disabilities, not just someone who looks like Dori who sits in a power wheelchair? Are they set up for people who are blind and use white canes? Are they set up for the deaf community where someone needs to sit near the front, or they might need to sit near the front where they can see the interpreter to interpret back and forth, or they might need what we call captioning or CART services? And when we are addressing disability related issues in grant proposals, that can help you all to enhance and expand what we call DEIA initiatives. Diversity, equity, and inclusion changed this year to DEIA, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, because the disability community is the largest minority in this country and we're the least recognized in the DEI realm. So there are a lot of grant opportunities out there for organizations to address accessibility concerns and accessibility needs for your programs through DEIA initiatives. And if any of you need help with that, please reach out. Mary does a lot of work with that, and David, who are from my organization that are here with us today to help people with those things. All right, next slide. Accommodation requests. And these are important. These are the supports that disabled people need to participate in events and activities. And before we even get to the information I'm going to share on the slide, I have a question for everybody. I put this slide up on purpose. This is an event that the Arts Commission is a part of with over close to 50 other community partners. It's called Advocacy Day for Access and Independence, and it's run by the disability community for the disability community to ensure that access and equitable opportunities exist for the disability community. I am in the picture in my power wheelchair with the t-shirt on from 2 years ago with my jeans and t-shirt. And then I have a colleague who is a person of color with black hair and a black beard, wearing glasses, and a blue Advocacy Day for Access and Independence t-shirt and tan pants. What are some things, I want to see if y'all can see it to know, and if not, I'll help you. What are some things that you notice in regards to accessibility that are in this picture for this event? What are some things that are in the picture that were used for accessibility for this event? Javi, woohoo, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Podium height, yes. We had an adjustable podium because people often say to us, we can't provide an accessible podium. They make adjustable podiums. This is one. An adjustable microphone, woohoo, yes. And yes, the person who said stairs, that would be an inaccessible thing, and that's why we're not actually on the stair part. I couldn't put it in the picture, but there is a ramp off to the side in front of the State House. A lower speaking boat, excellent. Javi, thank you, I appreciate it. An adjustable mic, you all got it. I didn't want to point it out. The sign language interpreter is at the event, and we switch off for the whole event, just like we're doing today. If you have an event that is more than 2 hours, you will need to hire multiple sign language or ASL interpreters for the event, because that's a lot of talking. This event we do is about 2.5 hours. It is, you can also use a stand for sheet music. Mary's sharing that with you all, that we have done that for some of our other events where we've had members of the disability community speaking that they didn't have a podium. So we brought a music stand that is adjustable to serve as a podium, and it's really, really inexpensive. So I just wanted to point out for y'all that there are ways to make some things accessible, and these items were not that expensive, and some of them we've even rented or borrowed. And if you needed to borrow them, we could help you all out to find where you could do that. But so what are some things we all need to keep in mind when we're talking about accommodations requests? Being prepared, woohoo! That means we need to have somebody assigned to take those requests. They need to have a phone number where someone can call them, as well as an email address. Not everybody can use physical voice like I am right now. Some people are deaf and use sign language. Some people have disabilities like cerebral palsy and aphasia that make physical communication difficult. So having a way that someone can email you is also good. Put it out there, ask. I ask everybody, because a majority of disabilities are non-apparent. That means only 2% of the disability population uses wheelchairs and other equipment. That means 98% of the disability community looks like people without disabilities. So asking everyone. Mary does it at her events. I do it at my events. David does it at events. We say, if anyone needs reasonable accommodations or supports, would be the plain language word, or supports, please come and see this person. If it's at the event, if it's ahead of the event, you want to put it on flyers or websites, please contact, and then their contact information. Once somebody asks for an accommodation, make sure you're ensuring the confirmation of what they need specifically and how you're going to provide it to them. So that's confirmation. We wanted to let y'all know, if sign language interpreters are requested, and or you're holding a big event where you're going to have them, because if you have a big event, you should. They need to be qualified under the law. Okay, that isn't Dori saying it, the ADA, Rehabilitation Act, they all say an interpreter has to be qualified. So it can't be a friend, it can't be somebody from the audience. They have to have a background in doing sign language. They also have education on understanding the deaf community, and that is really vital when you're a sign language or ASL interpreter. The folks with us today are qualified sign language interpreters and who have all of that knowledge and information. Braille and large print copies, and what we said earlier, if people use their phones, because a lot of our cell phones now, y'all, have what we call a screen reader built in, so they can read rich text format documents. And Mary has some great easy webinars on how to create those. So if any of you need that, let Mary know. And I also tell people you can email folks any materials ahead of time that are large print or rich text format, PDFs, or you can put it on a USB drive and give it to them the day of the event. At Able, we've done both. It depends on what that person needs and what works best for them. All right, thanks, Mary. Orientation to your space. I love this group. You guys are good. So I picked this picture on purpose, and I'm going to ask y'all 2 questions to do with it. Number 1, can you all share with me, either in the chat or unmute yourself, what would not be good about this space for an event, or the layout of the space? Anybody have some thoughts? If we're excellent, Christy said not enough aisle room. Chloe said paths are too narrow. What else might be going on, friends? Look at the way things are set up. Participants have to turn to look at the speaker board. Yes, not enough aisle room. Thank you, Katie. Jeff, fist bump, acoustics would be very difficult for people with hearing disabilities who may use hearing aids or cochlear implants. The sound, the narrow path, the TV. Yeah, I think that TV might be small, and depending on if you're using it to show materials like PowerPoints. The tables are all very tall. Yes. Heights of the table, very bright. The room, the fluorescent lights, plus they have the windows all open. Exactly for people with sensory disabilities. The tables are too high. What about the chairs, y'all? Anybody have some thoughts there? I'll help. They didn't, well, that too, no arms, but they didn't put any spaces for people with disabilities who might use canes, who might use wheelchairs, who might use other, what we call, the word is called assistive technology. That's the devices that people with disabilities use to navigate their lives and the community. Excellent, you all got it. Anybody else notice anything else about this room? Because I wanted y'all to be able to see what wouldn't be an ideal space. And we see a lot of these rooms now because everybody likes it to look like a loft space. That was a real trend for a while. And we have, y'all might not be able to see it, so I'll help. There is an open space above the ceiling. And for people with particular types of disability, all of that loud noise can be very distracting for people with attention disabilities, for people who may have autism. So really thinking about, what do our spaces actually look like? How are they arranged? Doesn't mean you have to keep it in that arrangement, but I wanted y'all to see where the difficulties could be as you're arranging a space and the layout. So some other tips to give you all would be to orient attendees to the program space with descriptive information. So if you're working with somebody with a visual disability and you're orienting them to the space, they don't have to stick to you like glue and be with you 24/7 while they're there. You just want to describe to them what the space looks like, where the chairs are located and the tables. Let them know where the restroom would be and if there's registration or anything else they need to be aware of. I agree, it's too close and small, Finley. And then it may also help to include specific directions getting to and from one area of location space to another. For that, this is where you're not expected to know this. This is what I'm talking about. You ask the person what works best for them. I have coworkers who orient to a space that are blind that learned using a clock method. I have coworkers who orient to a space by you telling them how many steps to count. And they're at the front desk or they're at the bathroom. So this is where you're going to ask the person and let them be the driver to explain to you how to best support them. Awesome. Next slide. Staff and volunteer training. I put a lot on here. I will encapsulate it for y'all, but basically, before events, before programs, we need to train staff on what are the accommodations we're providing at our event. If somebody has requested specific accommodations or supports, if we're using assistive listening devices, if there are certain emergency procedures for evacuating a building in an emergency, like Dori can't go down the elevator if it's a 2-story building and there's a fire. We need to know that, and everybody at the event that's on staff and a volunteer needs to know that. And the accessibility features of the venue and meetings, as well as the etiquette for communicating and interacting with people with disabilities. And we did that in the first webinar. So if you want to look back at that, or you want the handouts on that to share with staff and volunteers, it's a really good thing. I always say before the event happens, before the meeting happens, have an orientation for all the people that are going to be involved so that they know who they're going to need to assist, how that person wants to be assisted, and if there are any communication needs of any individuals participating. Some people might want plain language. Some people are going to want sign language. Some people are going to want to write it down so that everybody's on board and knows who's doing what and what their role is to support accessibility. I want y'all to really think about a lot of our events. It isn't just the event itself. It's the expectations we set before the event even happens. It's emphasizing that accessibility is important, that we're all here. As Christy said earlier, it's not one person's mission to be the accessibility person. It is our whole organization together that is promoting accessibility and inclusion. And when you as a leader set forth those expectations, then your staff and volunteers feel more comfortable with that. Talking with your staff ahead of time, or inviting Mary and Dori to do a disability culture training with your staff before an event. It can be short, it can be long, whatever you like, to talk about both the apparent disabilities and non-apparent disabilities, like learning disabilities, cognitive and mental health disabilities, or psychiatric disabilities. And then lastly, making sure that everybody involved on the staff and volunteers is looking at all the nights or all the days or all the weekends activities, including any social media events, and determining how they can be accessible beforehand. Like, we don't want somebody posting on social media and they're not using alt text for people who are blind, or using descriptions for people who cannot see what that beautiful ballroom looks like, for example. It's really important. All of these little things go into one big thing, which is accessibility and creating a welcoming environment. Next slide. Food. we're going to just share with y'all, if you have any food at events, it's not really recommended to have buffets, and I'm showing you why, because look how high those tables are, my friends. That's really hard for people who use equipment. If you have no choice but to have a buffet, then assigning some staff and volunteers who are going to be around the eating buffet area to assist people. I had to go to a recent experience, y'all, at a conference, and it was all buffet. And the assumption, I guess, is that disabled people, we all have somebody with us 24/7. My service dog does not have thumbs, so she cannot serve the food for me. And I had to go around the whole venue to find somebody to help me to get food. Otherwise, I couldn't eat the lunch that was provided, and I was there for like over 8 hours. So I want y'all to think about it. It makes a difference. Make sure on your accommodations that you're asking if anyone has dietary restrictions or allergies. That's really important. Don't serve food on risers. Put food items close to the edge. A lot of times people push it back on the table, but then if you're in a wheelchair like myself, you can't reach it. You can talk to your caterer. Can you have some of the meals pre-cut? That way people who need accessible knives and forks and things, they don't have to worry about all of that. Bendable straws. I'm going to share with y'all. We know people are very much about the environment, but the ADA says a bendable straw is a reasonable accommodation. I have to have straws, y'all. I cannot swallow liquids without it. Trust me, we throw more bottles away, plastic bottles, than straws. And so making sure that you have straws at an event for people who need it. And then the last one, if we say we're going to have lunch, dinner, snacks at a certain time, maintaining that time. Why? Because there are people with who have diabetes that have to eat at certain times of day, or other disabilities associated with medicines and health, where their dietary schedule is strict. And so if you say you're serving dinner at 6, they're counting that it's going to be 6. Now, 5 minutes late would be okay, but I've heard from folks in the community that they've gone to events, they didn't serve dinner for like an hour later, and then somebody had an insulin reaction or something like that. So you want to make sure that you're maintaining those meal schedules or snacks or whatever you're putting out. If you're telling people it's happening at a certain time, staying as close to that time as possible. Next slide. I wanted to share something else with you, and it's a quote. It says, refusing to use a microphone is like scheduling an event, program, or activity in a room accessible only by stairs. And then when your colleague in a wheelchair shows up at the event and asks for a ramp so they can attend, you stand at the top and say, no thanks, I'm good. Accessibility is important. A lot of people like to say, I don't want to use a microphone, I have a loud voice. Microphones are an important component of the accessibility. So I want to share with you guys that don't let people say we're not going to use microphones, because there are many, 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 many disabilities, apparent and non-apparent disabilities that use them. More non-apparent disabilities that you wouldn't be able to tell someone has a disability, and they need that microphone. So it's important for everybody to be using it. Next slide, Mary. So microphones should be used in a variety of ways. If you're at the podium and somebody's asking a question and you don't have an extra mic, for accessibility, repeat the question they asked into the microphone to make sure that everybody heard it, understands it. There are people who have electrical sensitivity disabilities. So they may say to you, I can't sit near the mic, I can't use the mic. It may be difficult for them. And so respect that, not people who just say, I don't want to talk loud. We're not talking about that. If you do any kind of Q&A, passing the microphone around, okay, because that's really important. And then what's recommended for accessibility is that people, when they use the mic, to position it 1 inch from their mouth. And I highlight this, Mary highlights it, and David, when we all do presentations, make this a rule or a guideline for all of your events, all of your performers, your speakers, if you have teachers or educators, everyone. Because when people start to get in the habit of doing it, then they're, I always say they're unintentionally reinforcing accessibility, and that's important. It's not people are trying to be difficult. They need it for communication and understanding. All right, next slide. Now, I put a video in, y'all. It wasn't intended for us to watch it today, because also people say Zoom is hard to hear a video, but we're sharing this PowerPoint with y'all, and it gives you tips for accessibility for microphones, and it goes through it. It's some of it's kind of funny. I like it. It's from a group called Rooted in Rights, and they talk about accessibility under the ADA and microphones. So we put it in here so that you could watch it, you could share it with some of your staff, your volunteers, your performers. So it's not just coming from you. You can say, I went to this presentation by Able South Carolina. And so you can put it on us. Mary put the link in the chat in case you want to save it on your computer now, but we'll send you a PDF of the PowerPoint to Amanda, and you're welcome to watch it on your own. Okay, next. It's going to want to show it, so you have to skip to the next slide, Mary, because of the way I embedded it. All right. So now let's say we have presenters and we have artists with disabilities, right, y'all? And they're going to present. It's going to be great. So, and on the screen, I have a picture of a person in a wheelchair. They are in a power chair wearing a white dress with navy blue shoes and long dark hair. And they're presenting in front of an audience that's watching them. So for presenters with disabilities, we have some things we want to keep in mind. Number one, let them request accommodations just like everybody else. Presenters with disabilities may have preferences. They may have microphone types. Like, I'll be honest with y'all, I prefer to wear a lapel mic. It's really hard for me with my hands to hold a mic for a really long time. So a lapel mic makes it easier. I'll do it if that's all they have, but podium use. I will oftentimes, y'all, people put me behind a tall podium. Nobody can see me. So I tell people up front, what kind of podium will you have? Well, if that's the case, I'm going to sit in front of it or to the side of it, because I want to connect with the audience just like all performers want to connect, or presenters. And then also, if you have a panel set up, you're doing a panel discussion, finding out how the seats need to be positioned, if an interpreter is going to be needed, a sign language interpreter, do we need to space out the chairs? Are we going to need table mics, lapel mics, what kind of microphones? The objective is to provide all of your presenters with equitable environment and tools that are comfortable for them. You don't know how many times, y'all, I've come to a presentation and the assumption was that I was a non-disabled person. And then I get there and people are like, uh-oh, what do we do? And I usually don't need that much of accommodation. So I'm like, unless you ask me, I'm just going to come and show up like everybody else will. And it stood out because they didn't have an accessible stage. So if the stage wasn't accessible, I had to stand or sit in front of the stage. They didn't have an accessible mic. So somebody else had to hold the mic while I talked. And it did more to make me stand out in a negative way than in a positive way. And that's not true, meaningful inclusion. It ends up looking like you didn't expect that disabled people would participate like other people would participate. And then equality in speaking, that all speakers should be on the same level, meaning if you're going to do a panel discussion, don't put like a high table, like those high top tables, or use really high stools. And then the person with the disability who uses a wheelchair, scooter, or other equipment, they're sitting really low compared to everybody else in the panel. All right, Mary. So there's really some good things with action and expression. We all love questions. We all love answering them, giving them, and that's a great part of presentations, events, and discussions. But we want to give you all some thoughts, okay? Not every person, disabled or not, can answer questions right off the cuff. We know that. But specifically for people with developmental disabilities, intellectual, cognitive disabilities, some people with psychiatric disabilities that need a minute to process information, it's important to give people a chance to answer questions. Like we live in a society that's go, 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 but we need to ask questions and give people the chance to process and answer. So giving that little bit of time, like I did in the beginning, to give everybody a chance to answer the questions. Don't require your participants to turn on their cameras during virtual events. There are people who have certain disabilities that the distraction of having on their camera can make it more difficult for them to focus on the material that's being covered during the virtual event. So don't like force people to do that. I know a lot of us would not do that, but there have been occasions. So I've been asked by the disability community to share that one. Poll participants, like in the beginning, like you can ask polls and let them answer what their thoughts or ideas are. Like Mary did the quiz in the beginning. You can do a poll into Zoom. And then ask for feedback. What do you think about this? What was this accessible? Did we give enough different options for people with a variety of communication disabilities to participate? You know, I don't always know what I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And if we can learn more, that's even better. And so sometimes giving opportunities where we can learn and learn from the people we want to include, that's really important. Mary and I and David want to give y'all about a few, like 5 minutes. Y'all want 5 minutes to stretch? Anybody need to go to the bathroom, grab a snack or something to drink? We'll give you about 5 minutes and start back up at like 4:30. If you don't, that's okay too, but we like to give a little break. And we put a picture in to make you all feel like fall is coming and it's going to be breezy and relaxing. All right, everybody ready? All right, we're going to keep going, friends. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about, y'all, some support personnel. People with disabilities sometimes bring personal care attendants or caregivers. So you want to make sure that if they want or need for health reasons, that person to be sitting with them or nearby them, that there's a place for them in meeting rooms and meal service areas. If there's overnight accommodations being provided to the individual, there'll need to be a room provided for that person who is the caregiver or assistant. And if that person is coming there with the individual, you typically would not charge them any conference or program fees. That's an accommodation to help that individual participate. Next slide. Service animals, I get asked about this all the time. And if you all need the ADA service animal fact sheet, we can provide it to you, but I recommend that everyone include it in their orientation materials for your event, conference, art festival. And make sure that you train your event staff about service animals, including we don't pet them, where are the relief areas for service animals to use the outside grass. And more hotels are including those in their hotel service animal areas because of that. And service animals may need space, just like a person with a wheelchair. So when you're planning your seating, plan for 2 seating spaces for each person bringing a service animal. Next slide. So Mary, I'm going to wrap this up about talking about how do we engage the disability community overall. Number 1, representation, representation, representation. If I do not see people with disabilities represented in materials, and other people with disabilities don't see themselves represented, how do they know they're welcome to come? You could provide direct links or PDFs or articles to see if ebooks or audiobooks are available as alternatives to physical copies of resources you may give to someone that are already accessible. You want to make images and videos and graphs that you add to your presentations accessible so that people can participate. And showing artists with disabilities. People tell me all the time, there are no artists. That's not true. I know many, 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 many artists with disabilities, not only here in South Carolina, but across the country. And so if we aren't giving the chance to showcase their work, how do people know that they're out there? And that's really important. Next slide. Part of engaging the disability community is developing an allyship and becoming an ally, which means A, acknowledging and respecting individuals' experiences, their abilities, their talents, their skills, and understanding that they're the expert on their disability. Nobody else is. The person who lives it 24/7. My husband may be my companion to an art event, but he's not the expert on my disability. I am. So asking someone's family, friends, companions about them, you should ask them, because they're the one who can tell you. And if they choose to have their person in their life involved in the conversation, then we let them do that. Be willing to learn about different disability types and categories. Leverage your influence. That means you all have influence as art providers, instructors, program and organization founders to promote accessibility and inclusion. You all have so much leverage, you don't even realize that you can use that leverage to uplift inclusion and allyship of the disability community. And I always say why. Yield the floor to people with disabilities. Let them help you identify and eliminate the barriers that you're thinking about. So maybe you're worried about the cost of an accommodation. Maybe come to ABLE, come to the disability community and say, hey, how can we work together to address this barrier? I had somebody who was afraid for an art program that someone was going to need this extensive easel, paintbrush, and all of these things. And I will tell you, I said, well, have you talked to the person yet? And they go, no, I haven't. Well, they talked to the person, and the person said, when they asked, what accommodation do you need? They said, oh, I just need a table to put my accessible easel, my paintbrush, and the other accessible tools that they had. So sometimes yield that floor, let them help you address those barriers. Next slide. When you're recruiting for activities and you're wanting to have the disability community be involved, develop strategic partnerships. You all are already our partner, and we're so excited about that. Because we can help you with that recruitment. We can help let people know what's going on. We can help you find the accommodations if you don't have them, that maybe you can borrow from the community to uplift that accessibility. Recruit people with disabilities for your, go back, Mary, for your program leads. Yeah, for your program leads and instructors or speakers, as well as onto your advisory board and leadership teams. And don't be afraid to develop outreach activities and programs focusing on adults and students with disabilities. Not separate programs for them, but programs that they already participate in with everybody else in the community. Next slide. Communication strategies. A lot of you have taken the disability culture and awareness webinar, but really going back and looking at that. Highlighting those achievements of artists with disabilities, demonstrating multiple modalities of communication in your instruction, programs, and advertising, putting images of people with disabilities and the accommodations they use in your materials. That's important. Just because I don't paint the same way someone else might doesn't mean my way isn't equally viable, and that somebody else in the community who may think it's not open for them or that they can't, by seeing somebody else do it who uses accommodations, opens that door for other people to say, hey, I might do this too, or I am a painter, I didn't know this was available to me. And encourage your staff and leaders to do conferences and training opportunities to learn more about the disability community. Next slide. We just wanted to remind everybody at the end of your event, collect some survey data where people share information about your programs, their participation, things they thought went well, things that could be improved. That's how we all learn. We do it to y'all, and the disability community shares with us what we can improve to, and we work at it all the time. That's part of being inclusive, is taking the good with the improvements, and that's a good thing. Hey, I want to know what I can do better. Next slide. Why might we want to include an assessment tool after a meeting, event, or program? Take the slide, Mary, next one. Because we want to find out, was our registration process accessible? Were the materials accessible? Was the on-site registration accessible? How easy was it to use the accommodations process? Were the promotional materials inclusive of the disability community and accessible? Was our website accessible where you registered? How about our presentation materials that we gave out at the event? The reception, the social activities, the meeting, the event site. If we booked hotel rooms for people, how did that go? If we provide transportation to non-disabled people to an event, you have to provide accessible transportation to people at an event. So just be aware of that. The law says it has to be equitable. Parking, how was that? Did we have enough accessible parking spaces? Meeting event rooms, were they laid out in an easy and accessible way? Were the presentations accessible? And the meal, trying to get the meals, were they accessible and inclusive as well? Next slide. So the last takeaways we're going to leave you with, and I'm going to have Mary go to the next slide. First off, we can't understand the disability community if we're not looking at the history of the disability community. And I gave you all some brief context. It's important to understand the experiences we've been through. We've had to advocate throughout history in the United States to have participation in any program and any equity to be able to participate. So whether it's smash curbs to ballot measures, people with disabilities and our allies have used a wide range of strategies to deal with exclusion and oppression. I'm going to tell you, I fought most of my life for justice and equity for not only me, but my peers with disabilities who just want to go to the same programs as everyone else. Next slide. And then I gave you some context about in 1977 during the Section 504 sit-in. For those of you who don't know, people with disabilities occupied federal buildings across the United States for 25 days in order to get Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 passed. At the Capitol crawl in 1990, we had to crawl up the steps of the U.S. Capitol to get the Americans with Disabilities Act passed, which helped make our buildings in our communities, our programs in our communities, and opportunities for people with disabilities to be employed. And the disability rights movement that originated in the 60s and 70s gave rise to the influence of social, culture, and political factors of disability. So if you can have that background, it helps you to understand why some people are, like myself, are so passionate about that accessibility and inclusion. We just want to be with everybody else. And when you have to fight for that for most of your life, just to come to a program which to you may not seem like it's that monumental, to me, it's a big deal to go in that art museum, to go to that art festival, to go to that art class, the program. It makes a big difference. Next slide. And this is just saying, as I said in the early part of this presentation, acknowledging disability, identity, and culture. Disability is something that a lot of us have pride in. We're proud to be members of our community. And you propelling that and promoting that is equally important. So when you guys are showcasing artists with disabilities and inviting us to all of the events just as participants, it makes such a big deal. You're saying to the community at large that we acknowledge disability, we invite disability, and we want equity for all. And that's really important. Next slide. Include the perspectives of disabled people in the programs that you're doing. So showcasing their stories and art that showcases their experiences of disability. And what that does, y'all, it counters the dominant narratives that frame disabled people as people who are broken, as people who have deficits, and as people who can't participate. It shifts that people with disabilities are active members of our community. And when those stories and art are included in your curriculum, in your programs, and in the opportunities that all of you offer in the community, what the community sees and learns from that is that people with disabilities share in their vision that everybody participate. We share in the vision of equity and inclusion for all people, including disabled people. Next slide. And now we're gonna let y'all ask some questions. And I know I have lots of things to say. I love working with the Arts Commission. Art is my love, and I am so glad for this program, and so glad for all of you that participate in increasing the accessibility and equity and participation of the disability community. Oh, thank you, Jean. That means so much to me. I hope I bring the energy that helps all of you. Does anybody have questions? Mary's just going to show you what else I put in the PowerPoint, just so I have my email address. So if any of you want to reach out, I have Abel's email address too in there, but if anybody has questions. And then Mary can show you the rest of it if you want, Mary. We put a whole bunch of resources in here for y'all. And then Mary just put the dates for the rest of the webinar series at the end in case any of you, we're going to be doing organizational accessibility practices to adopt on the 6th, new digital regulations, because there are new website regulations and digital regulations coming out. In February, we're going to be talking about how do we engage and include students and youth with disabilities. In March, getting creative, we're going to give you all some specific ways to provide accessibility. In April, Mary and her team are going to talk about assistive technology introduction for arts and artists. And then we got a request from y'all, and I think I'm going to be a part of this one too, but we don't own our building. So how do we still make our event accessible? Because we don't own it and we don't control it. And then y'all asked us in the beginning, we're doing a whole webinar. That's why I didn't get into detail on some of them, because we're going more detail on the other webinars, budgeting for accessibility. So those of you who wanted to know about budgeting and how you do that, we're going to do a whole webinar next year. What questions can we ask about disabilities? Are we allowed? Here's what you want to ask. Are you ready? And then Mary will do the last slide for me. So what you want to ask is, you ask this of everyone, because we don't want to just say, oh, remember I said about 98% of people with disabilities look like Mary. Can you put yourself on screen for me? 98% of people with disabilities look like Mary. Most people don't know Mary has a disability, and oftentimes we'll go places and in a training people will we've done disability culture together, and they'll assume that I'm the only one with a disability because I sit in a wheelchair and have service dog. You could tell. But I think that's really important that we all are just asking. I'm going to have Mary type the question, so if you want to copy and paste it. I use voice to text, so it won't work while we're doing the webinar. Are you ready? Do you need any reasonable accommodations or supports to participate in our programs? You can ask people as a demographic question if they have a disability, but you would want to put yes, no, prefer not to answer. That is their choice, whether they disclose it or not. And if they don't disclose it, that isn't considered under the law to be lying. I'll be honest with y'all, even though you can tell I have a disability, if I don't need a reasonable accommodation or support, I'm not going to just bring it up to people, because I only really need to disclose it if I need an accommodation or support. But you can just ask everybody. Did that answer your question? It's just, do you need any reasonable accommodation or support to participate in our program? If you ask someone if they have a disability as a demographic question, then you don't want to force them to disclose. Even if you can tell I have a disability, it's every individual's right on what they want to disclose, when they want to disclose it, and how they want to disclose it. The reality is, if I'm coming to an event, and Mary and David and I have had this, sometimes people come to our events and they won't disclose until they build a rapport with us, because they don't know us, they've had bad experience somewhere else. So sometimes they may not disclose to y'all until they get to know you better. Perfect. Mary copied your question, Lewis, just because it went to us and not to everyone else, and probably people have similar questions. Mary, you want to put our answer up again so it All right. Anybody
Yes,
else?
Dori, I'll do that. Do you want to cover service animal questions? That is oftentimes folks want to know.
Sure.
And
Did
we
you
might get
did
to that
someone
one of
have
our
a
other webinars.
specific, or
But
you want me just to tell information?
no,
So,
what can folks ask about a service dog?
okay, I'm gonna have you put it in the chat for people, since that way they can copy and paste too. The only two questions you can ask under Department of Justice guidelines are the following. Is it a service animal? Sorry, I had the hiccups from all of our talking. Is it a service animal? And then the second question, what tasks does the service animal perform for you? Now, you cannot ask them to demonstrate it. You cannot ask them any disability related questions. This is not me, this Department of Justice guidelines. You, if the service animal is with a person, it is not required to be certified. Okay, a lot of people have that false misinformation. That's not what the Department of Justice guidelines say. People can self-train their own service animals, or they can get them from an organization, but they also are not required, Mary, write this, they're not required to wear capes. They're not required to wear any acknowledgement that it's a service animal. They're not even also required to totally be on leash. There are certain service animals who do tasks for an individual that can't be on leash for them to do it. I'm just like letting you all know that. I just wanted people to know that, because there has been some misnomers. People not know, they read so much online. Online is a lot of information, and some of it's false. And so knowing that the Department of Justice guidelines, you can only ask two questions. If a service animal is a distraction, meaning they're biting, harming someone, you can ask the person to take their service animal out of the location, but you still have to provide that person the goods and services of your organization. And that's according to the Department of Justice. There are service animals, Jean, and it's usually in 2011, the Department of Justice amended service animals to be dogs, but there are still some miniature horses that are still allowed under Department of Justice guidelines. But it's somebody may have a service animal, Jean, that may help them take off their coat, and they can't do that leashed to the animal. And I'm sorry, Jeannie, if it's Jeannie, because all I can see, it like cuts off your name on my screen. It just shows the first part. So I apologize if I shortened it. They may take off someone's coat. They may do a retrieval for the person where it would need to be retrieved, and that they leash to them, they may not be able to get it for the person, like keys or something else like that. There are certain dogs for people with post-traumatic stress disorder that do a cue. It's called cover me, nothing happens, except the dog will face the opposite direction of the person, and it lets the person know someone's coming behind them. So just stands right next to them, but their head faces the way the person is coming behind them. So there are a lot of different things. If y'all want a training on service animals, we do that too, but it's a whole other training in itself. So that's just some nutshell information. We do get a lot of questions about service animals from the community, and yes, we know there are some people using animals that are probably pets. All you can do is ask those questions, and if they can answer it, then they're good. Now, emotional support animals are not currently covered by Department of Justice guidelines. They are allowed under certain laws in housing and in certain things, but they don't have the same rights of access as service animals do. So if you have specific questions about that, reach out to us. Let us know. We will happy to answer them. Anybody else have questions, comments, thoughts? I love to hear from people. Mary put up, our funders like to know how these classes are going, and we share it with Amanda too. So if y'all could do the survey, we are a nonprofit organization, and our funders like to know that we're providing information that is helpful to the community, and that helps us.
Dori,
Back
thank
to
you
you, Amanda.
so
Woohoo!
much. This was wonderful. As always, we just appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise with us in such a tangible way, and giving some really actionable items for everyone to take away. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for attending and sticking with us throughout all this information. And like we've shared before, this will be up on our site in the coming weeks. Once we have it ready and polished and ready to share, it will go up on the site. And we hope that everyone will join us next month on October 2nd for our next webinar in the series. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. It was great. Have a great evening, everyone. You're welcome.